public participation, so we're going to take that right now from the public. Again, please come up to the podium and state whatever your concern is. Give your name, please, and address, and you have 3 minutes to address the board. Opportunity also later, possibly. Which one of the boards want to speak? Okay.
You have a sympathy vote right now. You have a sympathy vote right now.
Do I have to say my name and address? My name is Kelly Smedley, and my address is 6730 White Oak Court in Hudson Hill. And we are here in support of the chicken ordinance. We would like to have a healthier option for our kids and a more cost-effective option in the school, and it would be a benefit to their education as well as just living there. So we would like and we would like for you guys to adopt the ordinance as quickly as possible because the time to get that.
Thank you. Just sort of, I'll tell you exactly where we are, because did the zoning administrator talk to you this morning about, she had some contact, I think, with either the state of Michigan or the MTA?
They're working on that.
I could, if you want me to give some information about that. Kurt Schindler, who is the Michigan State University Extension Department, he is the chairman of a joint committee working with the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development on coming up with a model ordinance for the state of Michigan. In his latest report, and this, I received it this morning, and I'll just read you what he has stated here. We do not have a timeline for completion of this work, referring to what you just asked about, but the goal is to be done this spring. Many local governments have been wishing to amend zoning to try to find compromise to accommodate various forms of urban agriculture, and in that they're including the backyard chickens, have been trying to have those amendments in place for this coming season. We have been advising local governments to wait till the sample zoning is done, the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development Urban Livestock Report is done. And so the first of those 2 reports is finished, and we're hoping to complete the other this spring.
Thanks. So we would hope to do that. We're not trying to delay it. I would hope that this spring, so certainly we will be in business by summer with certainly at least a draft zoning, I would expect, from the planning commission. And after that, it comes to the board and it's acted on. That will be our goal, certainly, to get that done by then. Okay, anyone else?
Hi, my name is Brian Biersma. I live at 1576 Rosewood Street in Jenison. I also just wanted to say that not just Hudsonville, but Jenison residents also would like to support the asking ways that go in for the chicken house. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing nothing, we'll close that and we'll go on to our workshop agenda. This meeting was called by 2 board members, and Mr. Shaw and Mr. Tuttle. And so I'm just going to try to moderate and make sure that we are respectful of decorum and so on. But pretty much turn it over to one of those or both of those gentlemen for the purposes that they call this meeting.
So, the chicken issue was hotly debated and seemed to be paramount in people's minds. And so, as we're putting together the agenda for this evening, to take a look at this, as to whether or not the board would want to pursue it on our own, I thought it would be something we at least would address. However, since you've got the other communiques, I just thought we'd discuss it tonight to see if there was a passion for pursuing it right.
Let me just say, I was unable to attend the last board meeting, and I know that this was brought forward. So let me just say, as a board representative to the Planning Commission has taken action by consensus to consider an ordinance, and they will do that. They're all amenable to doing that, and they'll do it when we get the sample ordinance. Our hope is that it'll be earlier in the spring, and we'll keep tabs on that. But my personal feeling is that the Planning Commission is going to take it up. There's 7 members, 6 of the community, some of them who have some identical feelings to what have been expressed here. And so my personal preference would be to keep it with the Planning Commission.
Any other input?
For what it's worth, that leaves it a little indefinite, I suppose, if you're listening, but it sounds like it's as soon as possible, put it that way.
Correct.
As soon as the government way possible. We don't do anything same day, but I'm not so sure we can promise either. I suppose if it's in the commission's hands, that it will satisfy those who want to buy, as they explained last meeting, chicks at a certain point in time and so on, but it moves as it does. I just hope that I was thinking about it later, but I hope that they move it quickly. I don't see the reason why it should take long. If there was any concerns, it's not uncommon to put a sunset provision in an ordinance to say 2 years. Let's just pass it and let's see. And thus far, we're getting all positive. Now, within that 2 years' time, if you were getting a lot of negative, maybe that would be the occasion to revisit it when it needs to be either adopted permanently or disbanded. But for whatever it's worth, it sounds like it's really out of our hands. But I hope the encouragement of the Planning Commission is, why not? Why not try it? And if you're uncertain, sunset it after a couple of years and see how it goes.
And if I can just respond to that, I would say that that's exactly where the Planning Commission is. I can't, of course, predict, but my sense is, and this is my direction with all of this, is that as we begin to discuss it, and we'll keep apprised of Mr. Schindler's committee and how they're doing, and if it looks as if they're going to be dragging this out for any extended period of time, then I think it probably would be incumbent upon us as a Planning Commission to say, well, we have other sample policies and other ideas that we can look at, that we could generate our own ordinance that would be based on what other communities in this area do. So I think we're going to keep tabs on what this committee is doing, and if it looks as if, well, they're going to go beyond spring and way into the fall or what have you, then Planning Commission will have to make a determination, and I would say that they probably could go ahead and put an ordinance together, but I think there will be some action.
And for what it's worth,
I think we want to give some other people a chance, rather than just have 2. Would anyone else?
I would just echo and support the dialogue that's happened, just from the standpoint of if it's going to take them too long, I support us moving ahead with our own ordinance, and we can always revise it later to bring it in line with whatever language. I think it was also important, Mr. Carlton shared earlier, that even if we begin the process today, it actually takes 2 months by the time we get through all the official postings and all of that before a formal ordinance could actually be in effect. So if we were to take action today, it would be 2 months before we could tell you the township policies would allow that. Now, I have no idea what it's like to raise chickens or the life cycle of the process of raising chickens. I just don't know. I'm not opposed to it. I just don't know, and probably won't choose to have chickens at my house even if the adoption of the ordinance does go forward. But that said, I think people on their own need to make a decision for what's right for them and their families. And if it looks like we're going to go down the path of adoption, then you make a decision on what you want to do with that information.
So when
Any other ordinance?
start working?
I didn't wink it. Do we think?
I like Jim's comment that we could do a sunset and come up with a proposal. There seemed to be comments after our last meeting that this is not rocket science, that possibly we could put together a proposal for us, looking at other communities as a model. But I'm not against waiting, but I agree with both Jim and Rich and Chad that I don't think we should go very long.
I would say the same thing.
Your microphone, holding the wrong color. You can also just push the button.
And I will say that I'm in favor of the chickens, and we're going to be a little bit patient and do it correctly, and hopefully the state will come through with the proper language that we need, and if not, we will adopt and just look at Granville or Hudson Bay or Jamestown, and what will happen over the next few months.
My position is I was somewhat supportive of this because this came up 2 or 3 years ago, and then it kind of died, and I didn't make a big to-do about it, but I was kind of supportive of it then, and I still am. I am to the point where they said the recommendation material or the framework of an ordinance is going to come out in spring, and in my estimation, spring would end June 1. So if it isn't there, then I would either favor the planning commission going ahead, or they can go ahead of time. I don't think it's necessary to wait, myself personally, for the recommendation of either MTA or policy or the agricultural committee. I think we can go without, because some of us have looked at several ordinances already, and is that it's not real complicated. And if necessary, I think also you've got to bear in mind that if you go through, which is certainly appropriate, and I prefer the planning commission making a recommendation to us, and then we can act on it. But also, the board does have the right to initiate its own ordinance, regardless of the planning commission. We prefer that it comes from the planning commission, but we do have that ability. But if there isn't something on the table in 2 months or so, I certainly would push to get something from the board at that time.
They always say you have a phone and a pen.
No, I don't. I have a pen that belongs to the township, but I do have a phone. And yes, if it's up to me, it'll be 1-0, and I can write the ordinance for you. I probably would consult an attorney, though. Okay, anything else? On chickens. Next item, Mr. Schwong.
Property signage colors, and Dan wanted to have this in here so there'd be clarity.
Sure, there was a little bit of confusion. I was looking for an interpretation of the discussion of the colors. Right now, the board approved changing the signs and updating the new signs of the parks, similar to the one at the cemetery. And I just want to make sure that's the colors that were approved, or we're looking for a change there. I know there was a lot of discussion on it. I'm just trying to find out what is it.
How was the color, Nancy? Can I jump in this one? I felt like consistency was important. We all agreed then that we liked the cemetery sign, that we went from 3 colors in doing so.
Was seconded by Jim Weiring, to approve authorizing the superintendent to place new or upgraded signs at the following: Woodcrest Park, Baldwin Street, Boulder Bluff Drive, Rosewood Park, 8th Avenue Park, Pioneer Park, Rush Creek Park, That motion carried unanimously at your last meeting, and I'm still in favor of that motion. I would concur. I wasn't here, so I couldn't vote on it, but I would just reaffirm the action that was taken a week ago Monday.
Okay.
So I'm happy with what we have.
My point of interest, whether there was any mention there of color deviations or not.
It's not.
So in essence, we are on this path to follow whatever to follow that motion. Now, certainly, and I think that was approved unanimously.
Correct.
Now, we can reconsider that motion concerning colors, sizes, et cetera, if someone wants to move, because we all were in favor of reconsideration. Then that motion can be changed or amended or whatever.
I don't know that we're different per se, because we approved Dan to go ahead and get signs at all of those locations, right? So Dan's good to get signs. I think Dan's asking us, before he buys the signs, what should the signs look like?
That's what I'm asking. I mean, there was motion made to approve as the one we had at the cemetery, then there was a lot of discussion after that about colors.
So I think the discussion on colors is additive to what the motion that was approved was. Now, personally, I don't have a strong opinion. I'm glad that, as Jim outlined, we went consistent with the color of the blues. I don't have a strong opinion on the other changes, but I do agree from a branding perspective, we should have a general look and feel. Now, maybe when you end up parking a truck next to a sign and they're right next to each other, you might go, hey, those are a little bit different. But I think if the general look and feel of blues and greens and the shape of the logo are the same, I don't have a strong opinion on if we're whatever key line goes off on the color of blues from one sign to the other.
The signs would be consistent. Am I correct in assuming that?
That's what I'm asking. They will be consistent.
They'll be consistent as of the way we stand now. The things that may not be consistent is our cards. They may not match the sign, but when we run out of cards, which will be in about 5 years, we can replace those with a true tone.
Now, you can see why I'm confused, because we keep changing. I just want to know those signs. Do we match them in the cemetery?
Okay, that's the one that's out there. Do we stay with that? Well, yes, and we're consistent.
That's what I'm asking is,
Okay.
where do you want that color changed?
Oh, all right. And the butcher will then change
I'm
it.
very, very happy with the color, but tend to agree with Jim, which I brought up myself at the last meeting. I do like to see that underline be a nickel finish. And the reason for that is it separates. I've driven several times now by that sign, and the blue on the top, the blue line, the blue underneath, there's a lot of blue. It's a little difficult to read when you're going 45 miles an hour. And I believe with the nickel finish, which will tie with the logo, will separate that there's two different headings rather than having free all of the blue.
Jim, are you supportive of that as well?
Yeah,
I'm supportive of that.
I'll support it.
Thank you.
We have four of us.
Well, I think you have to have a motion to do that. You can't just declare that that's going to be done. Someone has to move it.
And we already approved Dan to get the signs. Dan was just asking us what kind of signs to get.
Yeah, I think we can generally consider.
So you want the...
What are you agreeing to now?
All right, because I'm not in favor of it. So I just want to go on record.
Right now it's black and you want yellow?
Nickel.
Someone said a lot of yellow in their names. I took care of much less.
Do we need a motion? We all set?
No, I think if we advise. We approved the signs.
I'd like to hear who's in favor and who's not in favor.
I'm in favor. In favor.
I would be in favor too, but I kind of think I'd like to see it before it's actually done. Something needs to see it, but I think that would be good.
You want me to have that one changed and then come back to your saying?
If we get 2 more votes.
Can we get a picture? Would we be able to have could you do some type of picture with that color?
We have 4 people to vote, and we don't need to do that.
I'm in favor.
I'm not in favor. I think it's an added expense that probably is not going to be a big payoff in the long run. So I'm not in favor of doing it, but I'll go with the majority.
Can I have a further discussion on the cemetery sign? I would think it'd be awesome. All of you know I love lights, to light that up at night. And the reason is we're trying to sell a new logo or colors, and nothing more would do that than driving down at all these different parks, locations, that we would have a sign lit up at night.
I think that would be really good.
No, we don't normally let all the signs out there.
Is there any wiring available in that area?
Well, not at all the sites. At that particular site, there's a well, I mean, there is a well, so something could be done because there's like in that general area.
So now, based on the consensus that's taken place here, that means we're going to have to redo the sign at the cemetery as well. If they're all going to be consistent, correct?
Yes, we're going to have that change. That's what I want to know.
Like, generally, you light up signs for attraction to bring someone to the facility. I don't, other than maybe young couples, I don't see the cemetery being used very much.
But what's interesting about the cemetery is the traffic flow of 28th Avenue. Lots of cars.
Well, yes, but I think, unless they only go by there once in their lifetime at night, they will see it during the day, and they'll notice the Georgetown Cemetery.
It's only open during the hours.
Should that be discussed in committee?
Yeah, because it's not really the sign now, we're talking about the lighting of the sign. And,
Dan, which committee could that be put in? Cemetery, specifically for the cemetery all lights.
the utilities,
Either one, it doesn't matter, because it's really going to get off the property, fire or service. I mean, yeah. Go back in. We go back in.
so what it says, what it done.
Next, yes, office library display sign.
What time out? Do we need a motion to put it into committee?
No, you just sent it there.
And which committee will it be?
Utilities,
Services.
finance.
Thank you.
In our last meeting, of course, we were discussing the library sign, and there seemed to be pros and cons. Just going back and forth as far as discussion, the appropriate time to maybe become more specific with it. Are there any new thoughts concerning the sign, electrical sign up by Baldwin Avenue?
Seemed to be general consensus of going smaller, but the question was to go so small as to comply with statute that applies to businesses, or whether to give some measured variance, albeit not as large as what was proposed. I think that's the question before.
The picture we received, it looked like the sign itself was the same size, only the outside got smaller, but then with checking a few, the actual electronics does drop. I just wonder how significant that is. So I'm kind of asking, what are we looking at?
It depends how small you want to go. I guess there's any number of changes we can make to make it smaller. They can custom design it around the size you're looking for. There's certain panel sizes that you have to match those standards. So you go up by that, it's 11 inch or something like that, but you go up by each panel. They can go as small as you want, and then of course it's going to reduce the number of letters, or that can reach for the size of the display area. Then you can display things at what resolution you want or what size you want, but that's how visible it is for the cars driving by. So you want it to be visible. You notice sometimes on other signs you can see it, but you can't really see it very well. What they put on there is they're putting too much on the smaller screen, so you have to show it, on a little bit larger so you can actually see it. They can go as small as you want. I guess that's what I'm trying to confused by the question a little bit.
When this was first discussed, some of it originated with folks saying they wanted more communication from the township. And so one of the positives of having this type of a sign was that we can convey information. However, that being said, once you make that display area smaller, as Dan said, and the resolution, if you recall that website, when we went to that website to talk about resolution, they indicated that there should be a certain level of resolution in order for the traffic going 45 miles per hour or more down Baldwin in order for the sign to be visible. If you shrink that sign, you're going to lose that capability. So the question is, what is our goal in putting the sign out? I think for me, my goal is still, we want to get information out to our residents. Excuse me. So if that's our goal, then we have to say, okay, what's the best format in order to do that? And if we shrink that display area, we're going to have, and probably the resolution will make a difference. Well, it will make a difference. And so how small do we want to shrink it? Now, I'm not saying that it has to stay the size that was originally recommended, because I know there were comments made that, well, businesses do not need to adhere to this. However, that being said, I think we need to remember that we are a service. We're providing a service. We're not trying to gain profit. And I think there's a difference. Now, I'm not saying it has to be that size, but I'm just saying if we shrink it, then we need to evaluate what was our goal to begin with, and by shrinking it, if that display is shrunk to such an extent, will really fulfill that goal. That's my thought about it.
With you, Rich, I support the fact that there is a difference when it comes to government from a service perspective, and that would, I think, favor the idea that we don't necessarily have to adhere or put ourselves under a code that doesn't apply to us presently in terms of that size. But I would also agree with you, Rich, that I think the size as proposed can be reduced without us going so far as to reduce the effectiveness. And this is where I get a little bit uncertain here, Dan, in terms of your input, because you look at us and say, well, what do you want? Just tell me. You told me one thing, and I tell me another. But you're the guy immersed in the conversations and the calculations and all the rest of that. We would really value an opinion if you used to look personally. I don't have a vote, but from everything I've learned from the contractor and the rest, I would think you could shrink about maybe this much, but I wouldn't go any less than that.
Well, you can certainly shrink if you just want to put words up there and have display. But if you want to put pictures, and you saw the illustration, there's pictures and images, you want to have that with your words, that's really going to limit the area the smaller you get it. But certainly this is a large sign. You could go a lot smaller and still get most of the words that you want on there, but you're not going to have the same graphics visible for a car driving by. That's the key issue, is what you want people to see in their 3 seconds of driving by. What you want them to see is that sign right there. Because it doesn't work well at that speed to have the sign change for people to see the image twice at that speed.
And that goes to my point about what is our goal for the sign. If our goal for the sign is simply to get information out, then how many graphics do we really need? If that was our goal. Now, if our goal was to get graphics out with information, plus wouldn't it be nice to show a child doing the slip and slide on the same sign, then that's a different question. But in my mind, well, I've spoken on this a little bit, so.
Jan,
Yeah.
you have the 2 pictures here of the signs. If we went with a smaller one, couldn't we keep the screen the same size?
You eliminated the name, haven't you?
But then we just don't have this at the top. Is that correct? Or?
Well, I mean, there's two different, there's the size of the sign and what words you want to have on it, and there's the size of that display. So if you're asking, you can eliminate any part of that sign you wanted to eliminate. If you just have the GT, but there's a lot of times people want to know it's the library offices too, that's what the sign's for too, so,
You eliminate the brick underneath.
yeah,
Yeah.
you can,
That's what I was wondering, you know, if we kept the sign as it is, but just maybe eliminated the brick so it's not so high, or maybe had less brick.
well, the brick is part of the theme to match the other signs that you wanted to match, so.
Right, but I mean, here we've got quite a big wall, and here
Yeah,
we reduced it. That might be a better option.
Is
right.
that what you want?
That's what I was thinking,
Is
that
that what
might
you
be
want?
better.
You want a small one? Inside?
Well, I don't want the screen smaller, I want it all the same, but just the brick lower.
What you want? Okay, you want the brick lower, and you want the top cut off. Oh.
He said we could keep this, but.
So sacrifice the brick.
Yeah. Either, I don't know if it had to be totally sacrificed or.
Pretty close. Well, you'd have to.
Well, yeah,
Well,
you
here,
can go whatever you want.
it's, the foundation is
Foot and a half.
1.5 feet, and those others are 8 inches. The two, well, you need to still border. So, yeah, you could with a 1.5 feet.
I don't know if any of you other ones have this, but if you want to see this, you can pass it down. There's some papers on the bottom.
Anyone else on the sign?
I think that was one of my general comments on the sign were that we should be consistent with what we allow businesses. And I'm sensitive to what Rich just shared, but I think the ordinance that we have applies to any organization, non-governmental, not just businesses, but I think some of the biggest signs we have up on Baldwin are the church signs. And I'm sensitive to the fact that whatever we do, I would expect businesses, organizations are going to come in and just be asking township staff in the future. We just want to do the same size you guys have out front, and to put staff in that position of saying, no, you're not allowed because the ordinance doesn't allow it. To me, there's two ways to fix it. We can either do a sign that fits the current ordinance, or we can agree to revise the ordinance in the future to allow businesses who go through the very discussions we're having right now. You know, businesses, churches, others want people to have visibility with their signs out front too, along Baldwin, which is 45 miles an hour. So if we need to go up to make that happen for them, I am very supportive of that. I just want us to be consistent with the ordinance, because I don't want to put township staff in that position, and I don't want to look hypocritical with the sign. So to me, the big sign is probably a little overkill. I don't think we necessarily need 7 foot tall. I think we can come down a little bit to Rich's question. I think communicating information is far more important than displaying graphics. So if we can communicate information in a way that maybe requires us to sacrifice some big picture stuff, but still allows us to communicate information in a smaller sign, I'm very supportive of that. But I'm just one opinion too. So if you guys want the bigger sign, just
You know, that picture there is not the bigger sign.
It's small.
right. No, I know the sign was bigger than that, the
Yeah.
7 foot tall one. This is only 6 foot.
Correct, yeah.
John, you have some students?
I like Rich's comment that we are a service organization, but I'd like to see us discuss this more and look more in depth into it, because I still think we're divided on it.
What information
I
do you
have
need?
mixed emotions. I agree that we should have something that's going to be consistent that the rest of the community could follow.
My suggestion, excuse me, I'm sorry.
But you are right, we're a service organization.
Well,
I'd like to see the graphics.
what I was going to suggest was, based on some of the discussion that we've heard here, is it seems as if some want one, some want the other, but is there a compromise? And by that I mean, can we ask the company and direct our superintendent to take all of our comments and try to come up with a compromise and show us what that would be? That would give us the display area minus the graphics. I know you want the graphics. I was in favor of the graphics myself, but that's why I went to the point of what is our goal in doing this. as I already have said, not to repeat it again, but the goal was to provide information. Now, graphics would certainly be nice, but if we had that compromise and say, okay, this is what he's suggesting for what you want. I don't know, maybe that's not feasible, I don't know, but at least because, John, you did say, I think we should discuss this more. Well, we don't really know what we're discussing. I mean, we're discussing the sign, but we're not discussing, we don't know about the display area, we don't know what it can do, we don't know any of that. And so I think we need to, in my mind, to have that information so that we, can say, okay, here's, I don't know, that's just my point of view. But
I would also like to know the cost of some of the revised options, whatever the final consideration is that we're in.
I'm not sure what I'm hearing. Are you looking for a sign that meets our ordinance requirements for others? Is that what you're looking for? Or?
Let's settle that for at least direction for the superintendent. I can justify either one. I certainly can understand, as was commented by people, living within the ordinance. But I certainly understand also, if you regulate a sign for business that may be X number of square feet, and why do you do that? Well, many businesses say, I'd like a bigger sign. Why do you want a bigger sign? Because it draws more attention to my area, where it means I can make more money. We are not in that business. Schools are not in that business, and that's not why schools are in that, but schools are in that. So I can also understand and justify that it is not for profit. That's why businesses want more and bigger signs. And they'd like more signs, and we run into that all the time. There's a limit of how many signs you can have. Business would have big glaring signs because it increases their awareness, which increases their bottom line of profit. As I say, Rich said, we're not in that business, so I can justify a larger sign without worrying. If I can't justify it, then I do. But I also understand the sensitivity of okay, everyone must stay within this sign limit except schools. And so I can live with either decision, and I can live peacefully with either one. Okay, so first of all, who wants a reduction in the sign size, the proposed? 1, 2.
Well, I would like to see it,
I'd
yes.
like to see it too.
Okay, you want it reduced to what is by law, right?
Could there possibly be two?
Remain the same, but just lower.
Could we possibly get one that does meet the requirements? And
I'd
see
like
what we
one
have.
taller and narrower.
And then could we have one that is smaller? Than 7
Well, I
feet?
think if we have to decide, do we want it within the ordinance, and then have him give us that and say, this is what you're going to get.
I would like to see the ordinance, one done.
Well,
to the ordinance
chapter
and then one-
25 of the ordinance, if you read that, there's a whole section.
No, I mean, a sign that would be designed to fit the ordinance, and then one that would be smaller than what we have right now, that would still.
Well, I can't
So
see going
violate
smaller.
the ordinance by a couple feet, but not by 5
No,
feet.
I was not in the meetings as far as, I would like to see what a sign looks like
In
within the
the
ordinance. And then I'd like to see one that is, I think 7 feet is very big. I'd like to see
Okay,
one.
but we don't have 7 feet in front of us. What Dan sent, and then one on the right, we've got 3 votes, I think, already for that without knowing Ron and Dale's vote. Carol said if we knock 6 inches or so off the stone, you've got Rich and I and Carol that would go for that by a voluntary reduction, albeit not all the way to the ordinance size for businesses. I bet we got 3 right here for that right-hand picture.
Those 6 inches, put it within the ordinance.
That'd be a bonus.
It'd be more than, it'd be below the ordinance size.
So it sounds like what I'm hearing is, Dan, the one on the right, which is not compliant with the ordinance, if they could show that was 6 inches less, if you could show us a price for that, and side next to it, show us one that's compliant with the ordinance with a price for that. I think if you showed us those two options, compliant with the ordinance with a price, and the one on the right lowered 6 inches with a price, I think we would be able to make a decision.
No, I got that.
So we're getting to size, we have an estimate for the one.
That one there is just words, like yellow words coming across. That's what that one there is. You want
Right and left.
Yes, you want the display, or is that fine? Just putting words on.
Personally, I'm fine with just words.
I am too.
Okay, because that saves a lot of the cost when you switch up the images, so. Okay,
I mean, I'd love to see graphics, but I realized again, what I said that our goal was, so I'd be fine with just words.
Are you fine with these words?
I can move with it.
Okay, so we got the larger sign, we have a picture of that. So we just want,
Sure. I mean, yes.
okay, an assurance that the shorter will conform with the zoning ordinance. Not shorter, less square feet. Because I think the sign is not dependent on height until you get up to around 15 to 20 feet high. It's square feet, am I correct? Of signage, that's what the ordinance addresses, the square feet.
And the cost, you said.
Yeah, you need more clarity on that?
I'll give you several options to meet this, yeah.
All right. I don't want to leave this topic until Dan goes on the record as to his opinion.
I wouldn't put any words on it, any graphics at all if you're going to the smaller size. It looks nice without it.
If we're going to smaller size, then there's a caveat, but
Maybe
would you
you're not
go to
gonna
the
read
smaller
those-
size?
You're not going to read those 10 words anyway.
Yeah.
So why go 12 to 12, putting them on there? Just go to the sign that tells them what it is. It matches the other signs, township office, library.
You're kind of in line with what the majority is
Without the
saying.
graphics at all.
That's what the majority is saying. You're in line with that.
No, I mean without the display at all.
Eliminate the electronic
So
sign.
electronic part, you just have the sign.
That's what you're,
That's what I would-
okay, I just wondered, because you talked to them, well, we have,
That's like their proposal, yeah, that's,
yeah.
I would match the cemetery sign, type of
Okay.
sign.
All right.
Do you need
asked
any
you.
more? Do you need any more?
And the next part was to go to closed session, discuss property acquisition.
So,
Make that the last,
yeah, let's,
so people can leave them.
I think that's it. Is that okay? It's your phone.
I think that'll make it difficult,
Okay.
Meaning that it impacts other things you discussed.
I would support that.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Aye.
Aye. Carried 5-2.
Can I, sorry, I'm a little new at this, 40 minutes here. Who are the two?
Rich and Dale.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Let's see, so we'll move to the next one. Okay. I don't expect any action today, because it would have to be an emergency.
Turn your mics off.
And I don't see an emergency.
Is it a little larger?
I don't know about that, we have two votes.
One more member. Okay, we're out of closed session, and John, going to your next item, do you want to
Dan,
talk about?
sure, Dan had mentioned changing our committee structure or the format to a whole committee, the committee's meeting as a whole. And the board would meet the first meeting of the month at 4 o'clock as an agenda setting committee of the whole, which would combine finance, service, and utilities into one meeting. And then the second meeting would be for formal adoption. So Dan, if you want to address that in a little bit more detail?
Well, that's just one idea of how to handle it. Different board members have suggested it actually to me. That's why I put it on there for your discussion to see if you'd like to go that way. But, you know, right now, things come up in a committee and half the board members have encouraged, so we just thought, well, would it be better to try it as a committee as a whole for a couple of months or something? And that's what's kind of, I've heard different requests to give that a try, so you can hear it at the beginning and then have time to think it over for a couple of weeks for our actual formal meeting, and then you can make a decision at the formal meeting. So the first one would just be a discussion time.
You had something.
My view of this, I was never in favor of committee of the whole. I was always in favor of standing committees. However, last week, or Tuesday evening, the evening after your board meeting a week ago Monday, I watched the board meeting. And it occurred to me that it might not be a bad idea to think about operating as a committee of the whole, but to experiment with it. Let's try it for, pick a number, 4 months, 3 months, 6 months, whatever number the board would like to consider. And that though the work of the committees, such as services, utilities, finance, and so forth, be done as a committee of the whole. We all have the information, so that when we arrive at conclusions, and then when we have our regular board meeting, that everyone is up to speed on the discussion and that type of thing. So I'm in favor of experimenting with this for whatever, if the board decides that they'd like to do it, for whatever number they would choose. But I think it's worth us at least thinking about the possibility of doing that. That's just my feeling.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Carol?
I'm in favor of it too. I think we should at least try it. So often when we have committee meetings, I feel like there's just 3 of us, and we sometimes have some pretty big issues that come to us, like in services. And we usually make some type of recommendation to the board, but then it's like to rehash it all again. And I really feel it's important to have the input of the whole board on a lot of these issues. Smaller issues, it wouldn't matter so much, but when it comes to these bigger issues, and it's involving more money, I really feel it's important that we have all 7 of us discussing it. So I would like to try it. That's my opinion.
Jim?
Maybe I don't understand what's being proposed, because as you say, on bigger issues, I mean, is this idea that this meeting or this committee would not replace the others, or it would?
It would replace. Try it.
I'm kind of where Rich was, which is like the idea, kind of like the divide and conquer method that we have that funnels it into the 3 committees, and there's certain things we do within those committees that don't ever have to come to this board. So for efficiency's sake, I've liked it. I think maybe what you observed, I'm thinking, Rich, is you see how there's a lot of dialogue that people want to have, which is part of the reason for even calling it a special meeting today. It's sort of like, oh, we keep coming back to this, why don't we just have a committee of the whole? We need to become more, we have to be more ready at the meetings we do have each month to actually work on things and not feel like we have to get out in 45 minutes. I wonder if that's what we're really feeling as well. We're not getting our work done in our 2nd and 4th Mondays of the Monday nights of the month. Therefore, we call a workshop now, and then if we're going to call any workshops, we have a standing committee or committee of the whole. And we just need to work harder and dig in deeper the evenings we have our regular meetings. All that being said, I'll never refuse to try something. I mean, if you said, well, let's try it for a couple of months, I mean, I'm not going to stand in the way of that. I would go into it with the predisposition. I kind of like the system we have.
Ron, anything?
I go either way.
Okay. Personally, I'm on one committee that meets once a month, and all of you've been gracious, allowing me Rich and Dale and Carol will come into your office and share, and it gives me a great deal of insight. The notes are well done, I can see what's happening. But I like to ask questions of people directly, and right now we're not able to do that to the degree that personally, I'd like to see us be able to achieve. We talked before about the possibility of even before our board meetings, starting at 5 o'clock, having workshops. I think this would be virtually the same thing, yet we'd have all the committee business brought to us. We'd all have an opportunity to comment on it together. I feel I'd be much more informed. And I'd certainly like to see us try this, maybe for 3 months. If we find that we're not as effective, or it doesn't provide a format that is good for the public, then we would change it. But I'd like to see us consider this for at least 3 months.
Well, I hear 3 supportive with 1 halfway, either way, 1 abstaining. How about we'll work administratively, and at least with the clerk and the treasurer to set up a proposed format of how this is operate, how it would work. We'll present that back to the board for future discussion, also give the board, that this is the first time probably some of you have heard of it, to digest what is being thought of here. And bring it up again at a board meeting. I am very supportive of it. When I became supportive, when I was county commissioner there, they had 6 or 8 committees. And we don't fortunately enforce the rule of the code that much, because in the county, if it were parks, well, it had to go to the parks, but that had a financial component, so then it went from there to the finance committee, and you were serving on 3 committees, and you said, I've heard this before, and you hear it again. And then you hear it again kind of at the board meeting, because there's questions that come at the board meeting. And if you've been on the committee, you say, oh, I know this, and I know the answer to this, but it does take time. So I've been very, very supportive. And of course, committees get a kind of a bad name, I did look up some of the things, a committee is a group of the unprepared, appointed by the unwilling to do the unnecessary. And also, a committee should consist of 3 people, 2 of whom are absent. Committees have a bad name. And I certainly understand, and we are in the routine, but again, I would be concurrent with most of it to try it. But and what I hear that is, so it'll be incumbent upon us to set up some parameters of what goes on. And those committees, the time length, and so on.
So
And then see if you want to go that way.
Dr. Moore, there's no motion that has to be made, that we can just...
Let's set up a format of how this will go. And then, as I say, some of us, it's the first time you've been get with it, and give you a little time to consider it. Probably some of us, their minds already made up. But here, it was very interesting to hear Mr. Vanderklot's epiphany in the watching, was he was opposed, and his mind was changed. And with some consideration, maybe some of our others were changed. So unless you prefer to go the other way, but that's what I would.
Just one thought more, if I could, because it's new to me, the thought, I didn't know this was coming, but one thing about the way it's set up now is, you do dispose of business that doesn't have to come before the board, and then you recommend or pass along things that do, and we eventually are talking about it. Somebody said, well, we end up educating the rest of the board, but part of what we're doing too, in educating the rest of the board, those board meetings on those Monday evenings, is we're also educating the public. And I can see where if we're meeting on committee of the whole, and everyone's up to speed, it will appear to the public like, why you don't debate? This issue, well, that's a big issue. How did you ever come to consent? Well, we met in the committee of the whole, and we've already talked about everything. So you could lose some of that it's all open, all meetings are public, but you could lose some of that processing out loud on the record, if you will, that the public just wouldn't necessarily observe in the same way.
It isn't the same, I don't know if any of the other members have ever had an occasion. You look at the proposed agenda for a committee, and because I sometimes voice my opinion, boy, I would like to say it at committee level, but I'm not a member of it. I can't have a say. Because the committee is going to come out with a recommendation, and the general tendency always of the board is, yeah, sometimes they have debates, on colors and so on, but the general tendency is they say, the committee's done the work on it, so I'll accept what the committee has said. And as I say, it'd be very interesting to try. You have a dialogue, you have input in the decision rather than, do I approve the committee's recommendation or not?
Well, I agree with what Jim said a moment ago. That's why I think experimenting with it for a certain time period would be a good test, a good trial to see how well we respond to it and how well the public may respond to it or not so well. And so I'd be willing to try it, but I think if a format is proposed, it has to come back to the board anyway, and I would think that we would have to probably vote on whether or not we want to move in that direction. Isn't that correct? So this isn't something that's automatically going to be done. We have to have some kind of parameters to know what is involved with doing this. So it'll come back to us and we can discuss it and vote yea or nay at that point.
Yeah, it would, because it would be changing our format and be changing our rules and so on. So it would come back. And, like I heard a month or two, the county commission once went down this road. In fact, it came along with policy governance, which John, you now have read, Carver's book on policy governance, who's a little reluctant to those. And they suggested also to try it.
You made me read that, but go ahead.
But what I'm heading towards is, someone said a month or two, no, you want to try, in my opinion, at least 6 months, because they tried it without any parameters in it, and after 1 month, this was such a drastic change to them. A good many of the board members just fell apart because they've always operated this way. We've always operated. Can't stand the change. So after 1 month's trial, it was done. And they went back to their 8 or 9 or 10 committees. I don't know, they got a flock of them. Okay, so we'll try to get some parameters and we'll talk about it again. All right.
In our last meeting, we talked about the senior center, and Rich wasn't there. And I wondered, Rich, if you wanted to add anything or comments concerning the senior center, if you feel comfortable if we move ahead with that?
Well, my recollection is that the previous meeting, a motion was made, supported, and carried that the senior center be located at the eastern end of the current property, and that it be a 10,000 square foot facility, and that it be a maximum of $150 per square foot. That motion was made, supported, and it was carried unanimously. So I'm still on that page, and that's the direction, unless the board has different direction, I suppose, but that's my recollection of what was passed.
And you weren't privy. Well, yeah, you were privy. You did watch.
Mm-hmm.
You did watch it, so you know the discussion that went on. And right now, that is at the architect for some preliminary drawings, which will be coming back to the board, which is my understanding from the discussion of the size. We pretty much zeroed on per maximum per square foot size and usage. Probably likely that I hope the senior center director will be involved. And so that we can then direct the architect saying, okay, we do know this is how many square feet we we want, whether we want 4 stories or 3 stories, I'm kidding, 1 story or 2, parking, et cetera, et cetera.
I think in the original, or in the proposal that came from Progressive, you will recall that there were 3 steps that they said would be initiated. And one of those steps included the concept that I heard delineated Monday night, and that was that the director of the senior center, or someone, I'm assuming to be the director, would at some point be incorporated into that process in order to give input to that whole development piece. And so, and that was, I believe that was either the second or third step in the 3 steps that they had listed on their proposal to us, if you remember that.
Okay. And then Dan had added another item concerning Payless Shoes wants a 3-year lease with a rent reduction based on sales. That's just thrown out as a...
They've contacted us, they're currently on a month-to-month lease, and they've contacted us asking us for a 3-year lease. They want it based on sales, which would be a significant reduction from what they're paying now based on the sales they suggested. So I'm just kind of looking to see if you have any interest in going to a lease, and what direction you'd like to see looking here.
I'm in favor of month to month.
Okay?
Sign too.
And to
Guys are against too much, otherwise we can sell the property.
And I agree with that, and are we willing to risk them relocating? Okay. Are we open to any change in rent, or just hold the rent firm?
When, do you have a history of the past leases?
It's been month to month for some time. They've been paying the same rent for some time. So I don't
Sometime
have-
it's 3 months or 5 years?
I don't have that good history with me now.
Well, if we're, I think we're a month, we're here, month, 3 months, month. Why don't you just find, if you can't find it?
Okay. Shoot the information. Sure.
There's no kind of escalator that's been...
No. Well, there was originally when the lease expired, they just stayed on.
That in itself is a concession to hold...
Right, that's what I'm saying. I wasn't suggesting you needed to, but I just want you to know they're looking to that.
I'd be in favor of keeping it where it is.
Okay.
It's month to month.
At least for next month.
Obviously, it sounds as if they can't afford what they're paying right now.
Or they're just looking to
Tie it up.
save money and tie it up, yeah. So.
Which is understandable for business.
And then the last item, we got 200 Chicago Drive offer, and there seemed to be some concern about that, some thoughts. You want to share something here for a short period of time, but it's 6:10. But that's open for some discussion.
My perspective was that there was a price that, there was an initial offer, which was not acceptable to the board. The board countered, which now there's been monetarily no response on the counter. So, I'm done.
I would disagree with that. I think we need to reevaluate the situation. And I'd like to remind the board the history of the property, how we came to determine the value of the property, and here's just a little history. I'm not saying that these are exact numbers, but they're pretty close. When we got the property, we felt that market value of TSC was $750,000. Payless was $750,000. Kmart was $1.5 million, coming to a total of $3 million. The difficult situation we had at that time, obviously, we wanted to make a lower offer. We attempted to negotiate a lower price, but because of the seller situation, there was a bottom price. You either pay that or we're not going to sell you the piece of property. And there were some other issues going on at that point, as far as some potential tenants moving into the property. So we made the decision that we will purchase it for $3 million. The question always comes, was it worth $3 million from the time that we purchased it? In my professional opinion, it was probably a high price, but it was okay because we were taking care of a problem. However, what's interesting to me at this point is KFC, we estimated at $750, but the buyer got an appraisal on the property, and it came back at $437,000. So is the property worth $750,000, or is it worth $437,000 based on the appraisal? Based on my professional opinion as a real estate agent, the market value is $437,000 because the KFC had to go to the bank. The bank's going to use that as a value for financing. If KFC is worth $437,000, in my opinion, Payless has to be worth $437,000. They're comparable size, comparable square footage, that type of thing. If I were to take the value of Kmart of $1.5 million and $437,000 for KFC and Payless, that comes out to $2,374,000. Then we get an offer, and let's take a look at where the end numbers work. We were able to put a sale together for approximate number of $550 with KFC, because we took the $437 plus the last lease payments for the next couple of years, so we're going to get $550. I'm going to assume we'll sell Payless based on market value or an appraisal of $437. If my numbers are correct, Mr. Nelson's offer came in approximately $1.1 million. If I add up those three prices, that works out to $2,087,000. And I think to myself, boy, we're pretty close. With these three sales, when they come together, and if we let KFC and Payless go for $437,000, and someone pay us $1.5 million for Kmart, which they won't. But if we got lucky, we're at $2,300,000. That's a difference of $287,000. And as a real estate agent, someone who lives in this township for a long time, I want to remind all of you that there are 57 properties for sale or lease in Georgetown Township. It is not a seller's market. It is a buyer's market. No ifs, ands, ors, or buts. And the buyer's market, prices come down, they don't go up. 2, Hobby Lobby, 8 years for sale. And the only potential offer they've gotten is a church. Kmart's been for sale for 12 plus years. And I would just question some of us when we made a counteroffer. Your counteroffer was absolutely ridiculous because you took your list price times 35%, and I would disagree with everyone on the board unless you tell me differently and prove me differently, and that's the correct market value. My suggestion and recommendation has been that you get a professional appraisal. The benefit is it takes all the guessing game from this entire board what the value is, because it really, there's quite a difference between each individual person. 2, if the value is where you think it is, it's a great sales tool to go back to Mr. Nelson saying, we've hired a professional appraisal, and you are right, or we are right, and give a copy of that. If it comes back to where I think is going to end up, you're going to have to reevaluate your decision and say, you know what, now I know that this market value, I better negotiate at market value, because otherwise you're going to wait 8, 12 years for the next tenant to possibly fill that spot back there. There are some of you that are very concerned as far as the use of that property, what it may look like. At Georgetown Township, which is a great, great community to live in, but I can assure you, I see very, very little, if what I would call zero, new construction going in the business district. And when you have someone that wants to build 100,000 square feet, but you're not really sure that it's the right price, so you don't have a professional appraisal, you're really not sure if you really like the use of the building, or you're really not sure that you may not like the style of the building. All those are workable, we just need to be back at the table and negotiate. And what's happening at this point, according to Chris, it appears from Mr. Nelson's point of view that negotiations are done, because he's kind of indicated that. He did not accept the counteroffer. In my professional opinion, the counteroffer is way too high. Two, let's get back at the table, let's sit down with him, let's get an appraisal beforehand, so now we have a value to work with, and see what we can do that we don't like the design of the building, that perhaps we can ask him to dress up the building. If we do nothing, we're losing a great opportunity, because I cannot remember when the last time someone built a 100,000 square foot building. So my recommendation to this board is that you get a professional appraisal as quickly as possible. Contact Chris, bring Mr. Nelson back down here, and let's sit down at the table again and see if we can sit together.
Who knows?
Ron, for me commenting on that, Colliers had given us what they felt the value would be. That was not that long ago. He'd also talked to us about the potential of getting some medical facilities in there. Things that sounded exciting. To then come back and be substantially lower. Did you feel they lowballed us with a bait and switch to come back to something like this?
I don't think that's the case at all. Remember, all our conversation was with Chris. Chris was young and experienced. However, I respect him highly. We've never really had a conversation from day one until we got the offer with Earl. And I think that's why sometimes you have to be your own expert. And again, we represent the entire township. And rather than just relying on their word only, that we get a professional appraisal so that all seven of us can't argue what the value is. We're on the same page at that point. We're not on the same page. And whether this sale happens or not, it's still my recommendation to get an appraisal. Because if people are shooting from the hip saying the value is 85% of the list price, what does that mean? Who's to say that the list price is right to begin with?
Anyone else? Did Nelson have an appraisal?
No.
Just their own numbers.
Okay.
Anything else?
Well, what I gain from this is don't trust a realtor.
Yes.
Does anyone else have something to add this evening?
Well, I have a couple of other things, but I want to speak to John's point in just a moment, because there are two issues that you laid out for us. The first is obviously the offer that we have on the table for this property. The other is, and you said it yourself, if we don't do anything with this offer, you at least recommended that we get an appraisal of that piece of property. So those are two separate things. And my sense right now, if you want to know where I'm coming from, I'm not in favor of their offer. I appreciate all the work. I think your expertise is acknowledged. And you probably, I always hate to say this, but you're probably right. But the other piece is that getting an appraisal. Now, I think the board has to determine what do we want to do with the offer that's on the table, because that we can't keep that hanging out there forever unless we do nothing, and then he just says, well, is that the way it's written up when they give a proposal after a certain period of time that just kind of fades away, or how does that work? So there's a time frame when that will just fade away. But then the board has to decide, do we feel that Ron's discussion about getting an appraisal, is that a valuable thing to do? So that's I'm just kind of trying to ferret out some of the issues that we talked about.
You know, Ron, you talked about 100 square feet, 100,000 square feet, a very large building, but that is not a standard store structure. It's a concern for me. Are we ending up with another large building like a soccer zone? If they were to go out of business, who would take their place? What type of structure do they have there? I've looked at their website, other construction that they've done, seem like good people. But I have misgivings with who they're talking about as far as their tenants, just to be very honest with you. I would hope that we would be able to pull something better. And we're early in the process. We'll just put it on the market.
That's my concern. It's real early. This is the first offer. And there may not be covenant, but I don't know what we'd lose by waiting. The last building I saw that came close to 100,000 feet was a thing called Kmart, which now does not exist. We don't know for sure. We have an idea what the usage is going to be. I question the sustainability of that enough so that I'm not ready to, if he's not willing to negotiate on his side of the price, I'm not either.
That's my thing too. I worry about the sustainability of it. And so, you know, I just don't want to end up with another empty building like we did with Kmart. It's not sustainable.
I was pretty impressed with the assets of Mr. Nelson. If you look at his portfolio, which he provided for all of you, it's pretty impressive. And you're going to have that with any tenant. It's a risk with any new business going in. But when you have the opportunity of someone moving in, willing to spend the dollars, and willing to pay fair market value, I think we need to explore the option, because at this point, to the best of my knowledge, no one else is knocking at the door. And it's been a long time since someone's been knocking in Georgetown Township in the business district.
Which is on the contract law. Once their offer was made and we countered it, they killed their offer. And when they denied our counteroffer, they killed their counteroffer. There was nothing pending.
Yes.
Either side could present a new offer if they chose. It's within their purview if they wanted to lessen the amount they're after. You know, but if money's an issue with them, they really can't pay fair market value for the acres they're after. They could try to come back with a modified offer and ask for maybe half as much, and maybe not right in the center, but on an end or something, and we listen again.
I got a few emails from Chris indicating that Mr. Nelson would be willing to come to the township, sit down with us, review again, give some options, those type of things. However, if we're not interested in his use, if we're not interested in selling in what I would consider a fair market value, then we may not go any further. Anything else?
I have,
I'm all set, sir.
I have just three quick things that I would like the board to be thinking about. The first one is to consider reviewing Chapter 4 of the General Ordinances. That's the chapter that deals with alcoholic beverages. And specifically, when you review that, I would like you to look at Section 4.6, subsection 15. 4.6 deals with restriction on licenses. And the only reason that I'm bringing this up is we know we have several licenses available, but we have certain restrictions, which are good restrictions. But if someone wanted to bring a brewery in, they would not be able to do it under our ordinance now. Is that something we want to change? I don't know, but I'm just asking all of you to look at that. Or if somebody wanted a wine tasting room, or now, would someone want to settle here to do that? That's a whole different issue. And I guess the reason why I'm asking you to think about looking at that, or asking you to look at it, is just to kind of understand, do you think that by tweaking this, that might inspire someone? I don't know, but anyway, I'm just asking if you consider looking at that. The other idea that I'd like the board members to think about is a Christmas tree lighting event. Some kind of a festival around the Christmas season And I haven't thought this out at all, it's just something that, that occurred to me one day, and I don't know what that would be or anything, but I'm just wondering if, what you might think about library expansion. Remember, we had talked about that. That was in all of our plans. It was even as part of our bond proposal. And I'm not saying, you know, the next month, 2, 3, maybe 6, 8 months out, but we have to start thinking about, do we need to do that? And if we do, what would that look like? So just some things that I'd like us to think about.
Rich, do you want to move to put those on an agenda for one of the committees?
Not right now.
And you said mostly to think about.
Yeah, just to think about, because you all might think, a couple of us might think that Christmas tree thing is great, but some of the rest of you might say, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
The one in Granville was fantastic. It was
I'll
outstanding.
be thinking about it, but I think it's worth thinking about.
Yeah, and the other ones as well, but I would appreciate you looking at that chapter 4.
Definitely when we finish when we get the senior center underway. I certainly would like to.
Does the public have an opportunity to talk about?
Go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah, when you're finished.
One more thing. I'm working on a Memorial Day service, so if any of you have any suggestions for speakers, let me know. And I'll send it to you again, John, if you were interested in seeing that.
I would be happy to do that. Arlen was fantastic also. He was outstanding.
Anything else?
No, thanks. I'm good.
Public comments?
I got one small item. Chris Bosch, 8574 Red Court. I lived in Jefferson almost 40 years. I don't know what the history of the Georgetown Community Center versus the Georgetown Senior Center, or if that's just a semantics thing that we've gone through. This is something that they put out, and it actually says Georgetown Center. So I'm not sure, and I guess a recommendation I would make, since we have metrics right now, 50 people attending daily at the senior center, if we're going to spend that kind of money for the 50,000 people that live in Georgetown Township or thereabout, I would love to see a Georgetown Center that doesn't handcuff us to only a certain building block or certain restrictions as to who can use it. A community center would open itself up to anything from cadets after school or Boy Scout meetings or a number of different ideas that we can utilize it for, kind of a multi-function type process that the entire community could use. So just as a thought, as we're going through the naming of the process and what the signage might look like, it might play better with the community, calling it a community center rather than specifically a senior center, even though the seniors are using it just like the rest of the community. So just a thought. Thank you.
Hello, John.
Hello, John Cade, 7869 Parkside Court, in case you're taking minutes. I'd like to comment on what Rod said as far as appraisals. And in my opinion, I think you should get an appraisal so you have an educated feeling of what it is actually worth. Now my question would be, how much does it cost to get the appraisal, which I do not know. Are we talking 25,000 or are we talking a lot more than that? 5,000?
Needs to be confirmed, about 5,000.
I would say on something on a $1 to $3 million project, $5,000 is a reasonable amount to pay for something so you know what you're referring to. Doesn't mean that you have to automatically drop your price at that, but at least that is where you know that is what is probably where it's going to sell. And then as far as, I do not know what these people want to put up there. Obviously, there must be some reservation based on the comments. secondary concern, even though an important concern, as far as knowing the price. So whether it's 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, I'm sure you all want to believe it's worth as much as you paid for it. I'd like to list my house for 1.2 million, but yeah, probably wouldn't go much more than half of that. But I would, in my opinion, recommend that the board, if it's only $5,000, approves the price. On the other topic, which is totally different, as far as this chicken ordinance, the lady who was here with 3 children was going to stay and get up, but the children didn't want to stay. That you don't wait too long. Apparently, I do not know anything about chickens. I'm not going to have any chickens, but apparently this is the time of year if you're going to start it. You need to get them, not in July. That's what I'm saying. Thank you.
Chickens are big around Easter time. Just when you see all the little chicks, people bring home. Which is this month, isn't it? April.
Michael Bosch, 896 Fairwood Court. I think we should remember too with the Chicago Drive Kmart property that it's been on the market, I think 30 days, maybe 60 days. The average time on the market for a commercial property is 2 to 3 years. So I don't think we should be in a big rush, especially at that price of 1.1 million. And as far as comparables too, I think it's a great idea to get a price of 5,000 seems kind of high. But hey, if it gets us a more accurate number, I think that's good. Some comparables we know too, right down the road, Georgetown Center, which is unimproved commercial property, office service. 1 acre sells for about $130,000. That's a nowhere zone, nowhere. In Chicago Drive, that's prime. That's probably our most prime real estate in the township. And then comparison also, O'Reilly's on Baldwin, 1/7 of an acre, $400,000. Something to consider. That's when you look at 1/7 of an acre for $400,000 compared to 1.1 million for, is it 13? Is it 13 acres? Is that total, including Payless or is that just Kmart? I think it's all.
What's the total that we own?
It's like 12 acres plus the other 2.
So Kmart's 12 acres.
We're keeping some along the creek, which is why they.
Oh, that's right. So we'll call it 11 acres for 1.1 million. Crazy. I think we can wait. Let's not make any more rush decisions. Those are very costly. We know that. And I didn't know Chris was going to talk about senior center, but same thing. Last time there was a discussion called the community center. I think that it would get more favor calling it community center, making it community center. I don't remember if I suggested it before I am. Open until 9 o'clock at night, renting out on the weekends, the wedding receptions, family events, something. We're not going to break even, obviously, but just something to help recoup our costs. Also, I think we need to have more accurate or more accurately reflected membership prices. I know Byron Center is, as a comparison, their community center, membership for over 55 is $140. And then they also have to pay for classes. Like we do a Zumba class for I think $2. I think it needs to be more realistic. Same thing with lunches. And then we get the whole Georgetown transportation where the numbers just aren't adding up because we're giving it away. I think they have to be accurate, real numbers to reflect what it costs. Especially we already have a senior center. If we're going to build another one, let's up that cost, the membership, up the cost of the programs. Because I think what we would see is if we charged a reasonable, accurate price, we wouldn't have, I mean, we don't even have much participation now, but if we charge an accurate price, I think we'd see it drop the next month. So that says, we really need it. So let's make a community center if we're going to do it and get more people involved, more people on board too. Thanks. That's it.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay. And then how are we doing as far as having public forum, more of a town hall meeting? Something we're still talking about, or?
It's going to happen. I mean, and in fact, I was just thinking that last night because I said it's going to happen, and I honestly haven't done anything. But I will make a number to do that.
I'd love to see it. I'm at the town for the services and finance meetings, and it's like, I wish I could participate. because a lot of times it says, well, how much does this cost me? I know right off the top of my head what it costs us. Or what, if there's a question. I know auto body, I know lawnmowers, commercial mowers, I know cars, trucks, a lot of stuff. I'd love to give my input as being an outsider.
Yeah, I don't think I didn't hear anyone on the board that was opposed to it. It's something to take like that. And I appreciate your reminder on my board.
And I love the idea too of a full board committee. I think that's great. I don't think having two here, two board members on one services, two board members on finance, because then a lot of them aren't up to speed. It'd be nice just to get everybody on board, talk about it together. So even if the community is not part of that conversation, so it'd be good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Entertained motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.